Welcome to another OG55 Q&A. We are answering your questions. We got a lot of fantastic questions this time. Actually, we got so many that I'm probably going to got to do a second video on all the questions. We're not going to get to all of them today, but I got Citrus George here with me answering your questions today. It's going to be an epic show up next on OG55. Welcome aboard to another Q&A, Orange Grove 55. I got Citrus George with me today. George, if you could let everybody at home know where they can find this sexy Italiano over here.
Italiano. Huh? Forget about it.
Forget about it.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Disney George. You could check out the podcast I'm part of called A Walk with Walt. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info. And of course, you had mentioned that we might not get through all this, so we're probably going to have to do a part 2. So what you're saying is, OG, we're not doing 1, we're doing 2.
We're doing two. Just like Bob Iger said at that D23 Expo a few years ago when he announced Galaxy's Edge, right? We're not just building 1, we're building 2. We're building 2. So let's go ahead and dive right in. We got some great questions. This is from our dear friend, our beloved Mr. Captain John D. You know, it wouldn't be...
Did you have... I was just going to say, you have got to give him his drop.
I got to give him a drop. Here we go.
Yeah, that's for you, Captain.
That's for you, Captain. We're sailing the 7 seas. And Captain John D here says, OG, give us your top 3 animated and top 3 live action Disney films pre-Walt's death, 1966. So George, I'll go ahead and kick this one off, and then I'll take it over to you.
Sounds good.
My top 3 animated. Okay, I got to go Snow White. Now, these are in no specific order necessarily, right? I got to go Snow White just because, hey, come on, it's the first animated film. It was Walt's passion project. Gorgeous movie. I mean, a work of absolute art. Snow White is definitely on my top 3. Another one on my top 3 would have to be Peter Pan. I think that 1950s Mary Blair era is just quintessential Disney, right? The colors, the way the animation looked, it was just like such a Disney style, right? Mm-hmm. I feel like Disney kind of lost a little bit of their style, like kind of in the 70s with like that real sketchy, like Aristocats look, right? Mm-hmm. It was a 1950s Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp. That's where like you had like peak Disney animation. I think it was just perfect. So Peter Pan's up there, and my my third and final one would be Pinocchio. I absolutely love Pinocchio. Again, another gorgeously animated. The backgrounds are, gosh, probably the best backgrounds Disney has ever done in an animated film. For a hand-drawn animated film in the 1940s, I don't even think some of the CGI stuff they do today matches some of those backgrounds in Pinocchio. An absolute flawless movie in so many ways. Love it, love it, love it. Pretty dark movie too, actually. It was very, very, just an absolute masterpiece. Now, in terms of live action, I'm going to have to go Pollyanna. Okay. I absolutely love Pollyanna. It's a great, positive, optimistic message. It's a great movie. Mary Poppins. Now, I know technically there's animation in there. Still think that it's live action. Got to go with Mary Poppins. Another one of Walt's passion projects. And last, but certainly not least, Swiss Family Robinson. Love that movie. So those are my 3 animated and my 3 live action of the films pre-Walt's death. What say you, Citrus George?
For me, animated, we're pretty close with those. I would have to go with Snow White. Obviously, the same as you. It was Disney's folly. I mean, it was like the first animated feature film ever. It was the first one that helped him build his studio. It basically it was the selling point to everything that we have today in the company. I mean, everything is paid a lot to Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And as you had mentioned, for it being the first animated film, you go back in that movie and you look at it and you're like, how was this ever made in the 30s? It's
Right.
like it's something. It's like the crisp animation between the caricatures of Snow White, the prince, the evil queen, but then you kind of have like the slapstick kind of fun characters that within the Seven Dwarfs and the animals. So yeah, definitely Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Number 2 is another one of yours, is Pinocchio. Aside from, as you mentioned, the gorgeous backdrops of how they panned the camera along with those animated cells, that it didn't move you forward into the scene, it moved you across and then inward, which when you see like the schoolhouse and you see the doves flying in the sky, and then it hones in onto the village with all the people, the kids going to school, the villagers, what have you. And of course, Jiminy Cricket is my all-time favorite Disney character, so I got to give it to him. And one of the greatest songs ever written for this movie, which is actually the anthem of the studios, is When You Wish Upon a Star. So like when you put all that together in a nice little package, you got to give it to the little wooden boy who wanted to be a real true boy.
Yeah, exactly.
And my third one is actually Sleeping Beauty.
Oh, good one. Good one.
Because Sleeping Beauty for me was the very last film that signified and showcased that pure rich animation. And as you had mentioned, like when it started moving into the 60s with 101 Dalmatians, the Aristocats, it started kind of lacking when they did that photocopy type animation instead of cell animation. And it was the blend of Mary Blair and Ivan Earle, the great Ivan Earle's paintings, that the scope of this film was just phenomenal. And so Sleeping Beauty is my third.
Perfect.
As far as for live action goes, I would have to go with Mary Poppins, as you had mentioned, because it's Walt Disney's crowning achievement. I mean, it's what can you say more? She's practically perfect in every way.
Yeah, exactly.
That's basically all I could say about that.
And honestly, even I was really nervous about the sequel. I was like, oh gosh, right? They're gonna mess this up, right? Because how do you top that, or how do you even match that original film? I gotta give credit, man. That Mary Poppins Return was a really, 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 really good movie. I really enjoyed it. It felt very classic Disney to me.
Absolutely. And then of course it won the Academy Award for Chim Chim Cheree for the Sherman Brothers, and of course Julie Andrews won for Best Actress, which is actually doesn't happen very often with a Disney film to win for Best Actor or Best Actress. And I believe, and you can write in the comments if I am incorrect, after Julie Andrews won for Best Actress, I think the only other actor that was nominated for Best Actor for a Disney live action film in that canon was Johnny Depp for his portrayal of Captain Jack Sparrow for the Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl. Because I know he was nominated, he didn't win, but he was definitely nominated for that role. Second one for me would be The Parent Trap.
Oh, that's a good one, dude. Yeah.
I absolutely love that film. It was one of the first live action Disney films I ever remember watching as a young child. And it was like the technology used for that. I mean, now you could look at it and say, okay, it was simple. But back then you're looking at that and it's like, whoa, I mean, there's 2 Haley Mills. How is there 2 of them? There was only one of them in Pollyanna, but now we got 2.
We got 2. And I got to say, too, the dad in that movie, I think played by Brian Keith, great actor. I know I think he did a few movies with Disney, but he was phenomenal in that.
He was, yes. He and Maureen O'Hara were just, their chemistry together on camera was just phenomenal. It was like that love-hate relationship that you just have to watch, and it's a feel-good movie.
Oh, it is. And Maureen O'Hara has such a classic, really beautiful woman and very classical Hollywood, right?
Yes.
Yeah, she was very elegant, and
She
she
was
just
she was elegant, and yet she wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty.
right,
And
exactly.
and I could appreciate that from a woman. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And what's your
And
number three?
yes, and my number three again, OG. We got the thing. It's the Swiss Family Robinson. It's like
Yeah.
that's just classic to me, and it's like it's just one of those films that a lot of people may not know about or appreciate. But it's like if you are into the company, it's like it's classic Disney, and it's like you don't get films like that anymore.
No, I know. It's a feel-good movie. It really is. It just has that. There's something about like that 1960s era live action Disney film, or really any movie from the 1960s. The way it was shot with the film just has like this very positive kind of look to it. Like, right? I can't really
Yes.
explain it. It's very optimistic feeling, the
Yes.
way those movies were shot back then, right? There wasn't a lot of like filter and things like that.
Yes.
It just looked really great.
And I
don't
do
know, that
have
movie's
and
fantastic.
I do have a runner up for the live action because it was like a toss between and I can't remember if this was post or pre Walt's death or not. I can't remember the actual year, so that's why I didn't really go with it. This is more of a comedy, and I never seen it before until I actually got Disney Plus, and it's Blackbeard's Ghost.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, man.
And that one is it's just fun. Like whether or not you hear it or not, but like a movie back in that time, it had some chops to it, some comedic chops, and actually the actor, a little piece of Disney trivia for all who don't know or have not seen the movie, which I say see the movie. It's a very good movie. The actor who plays Blackbeard does the voice of Prince John in Robin Hood.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Wow. Okay. I did not know that. Awesome. It's a fun little movie. Another one that everyone at home might want to check out if it's still on Disney Plus. I know they've been purging some stuff off of that platform, but it's a movie called Those Callaways. It's kind of a deep cut Disney movie.
Yeah.
Really, really good film. Have you seen that one, George?
I have. Those Callaways, Swiss Family Robinson. This movie, I believe, is not on Disney Plus. In Search of the Castaways. That's another good movie. As I said, I don't believe that one is on there. I don't know why they didn't add that on there yet. That's another film that stars Haley Mills for her contribution to the company, and that's another good one.
Yeah. Haley Mills, absolute Disney legend. I mean, she's incredible, absolutely incredible. Now that brings us to our next topic from the Happiest Hour on Earth podcast, and they're saying here, what's your favorite topic to cover? Movies, parks, something outside of Disney? I'll start with you, George. Go ahead, sir.
Cool. I'm actually glad you started me with this one because I was going to ask you when you sent me the questions if I could start with this one. Now this may be a cop-out, but it really isn't. I really don't necessarily have a favorite topic, whether it's movies, parks, or even something outside of Disney, that I just enjoy any opportunity that I can come on with my brothers and have a conversation, and we give our opinions, we debate, we throw facts, we talk about stuff. So I can't necessarily just pick one topic. So any opportunity that I can have to come on the show and talk shop with my brothers is always a good topic for me.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way. I always have a good time. Whatever we're talking about, it's always a good time. I mean, sometimes depending on kind of what the news stories are, I will sort of get a little bit more or less excited for those topics. So, like for example, if there's really crazy, awesome park news, I'm like, oh my God, we got to get on and talk about this, or this crazy studio news, we got to get on here and talk about this. But I even like talking about stuff that's not Disney, sometimes, I mean, variety, spice of life. I've done a few videos lately and what have you, that's nothing to do with Disney. And it's always kind of fun to dip into some other topics like that. Right. And even when I put that out there, like on the community tab to ask us anything for this Q&A, I said, if it's not Disney related, that's okay. If you want to talk music, if you want to talk whatever you guys want to talk about, ask about us, like, our personal life or whatever. You could do that. It's just kind of fun to dip into different areas, right?
And I love how when we do talk about those kind of topics, we could still find something that relates to Disney. It's like, for instance, like when you did your solo video talking about Blackpink, it was about Blackpink, but you kind of honed it back to where, like, their relationship as a group and how they prioritize to not be this kind of big-headed level type of celebrity, and they're very humbled and what have you. And then you kind of retract that back to saying like, well, this is what is like in the industry of entertainment and what have you. So it's always a good time. It really is. And sometimes some of the interesting topics are the ones that aren't really planned. They just kind of happen, and it's like, and then it's like, oh, breaking news, and it's like, okay, we got to talk about it, and it's like those are the juicy topics.
Oh yeah, those get real juicy, and I have a blast, like you said, George, with you fellas, everyone that we have on here as a guest or whatever, talking shop. The only time that I kind of get a little burnt out when it comes to Disney stuff is on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Twitter, I tell you, man, nobody hates Disney more than Disney fans on Twitter. Right? I mean, every time the stock goes down, people get like a boner over it, right? It's all you hear about. It's how, it's like the Twitter stuff drives me nuts. It really does exhaust me. And coming on here and talking with you and Dre and Jay and Alia and all of our family, and the people that watch our show, we talk to. I love talking this with all you guys and gals, but Twitter sometimes,
that could get a little choppy.
It gets a little choppy, man. Has that kind of been your experience a little bit, George?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's why I go on Twitter, and I love when people interact with me, because that's why I give my my Twitter name and everything. But it's like, after so long, it's like, okay, this conversation is starting to go into a beat and narrow path, and it's like it's not going anywhere. And it's like I'm not engaging. I'm gonna exit very eloquently.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of like, for my personality, I'm very much like a solution kind of person. Like, if there's a problem, I want to start working on like the solution, right? So if I go on Twitter and I see a bunch of people just complaining about stuff that we can't control, like we don't run the mouse house, so it's a bunch of stuff like, we hate this, we hate that, we hate this, we hate that, and there's no solution on our end. For me, it just seems like a recipe for like, it's just unhealthy. Right? It's just unhealthy to kind of constantly do that, because you have no control over it, right? Like, so if I have something in my personal life where this isn't working out, well, it's my life. I can do stuff now to remedy that situation. I have no control over what Disney does with Hulu or ESPN. So why am I going to sit there and read a million tweets about how terrible everything is? All I'm going to do is stress myself out and make myself miserable.
Yeah.
give myself an ulcer, So that's why the negative stuff really kind of wears. Now, not to say that you put your head in the sand and you ignore it. No, I mean, you got to be well informed. But there's like this kind of, like almost like this obsession with this bad news on Twitter. Well, and it's not just Disney either. It's
especially now, like now people are like starting to refer to things like it's the Disney doomsday, and it's like it's like, come on, it's like,
come on, dude.
You don't have to agree with everything, obviously you could have your opinions, but you don't always have to disagree about everything.
Yeah. Well, and the thing too, and we talked about a lot on the channel, is that Disney is under a microscope, right? Where it's like, so perception is very much reality. And so when everyone's just focusing on Disney, their problems seem way bigger than everybody else's, because no one else is talking about these other studios on that same level, right?
Correct.
So it seems like an exaggerated issue at Disney, like, oh, well, it's only Disney that's really going through this. Every other studio seems fine. We never hear about these other studios, right? And that really isn't the case. I mean, right now, like all these studios are going through hell right now. I mean, they're trying to survive. Each one of them has their own set of issues, and but you wouldn't really know that on Twitter because everyone's just focused on the mouse house. Now we have a mutual friend, Disney Glimpses, who we love dearly, Disney DG, yes. Shout out. And he's saying, well, it's because no one else cares about those other studios. Probably right. But it's still, but even if that is the case, it's still, the fact is that people still focus on Disney for whatever reason it is. And I think that does make it look worse than than the actual perception. So
And
when you hear stuff like Doomsday and stuff, it's like, come on. I mean, they're going through it, but they're not going to go bankrupt or.
Yeah, no. And I think where people hold Disney to a higher standard is because a lot of times they take Walt Disney himself out of the equation, but sometimes that could be why people hold it to a higher standard, because he had such a meticulous way of how he wanted to run his company, of how he wanted his brand to be showcased. So it was always this pristine, and I'm not saying it was perfect. Obviously, he had a lot of issues back in the times, when he was alive with his studios and the parks and what have you. But he always tried to find, and as you had mentioned, a way to problem solve and make it better. So it's almost to the point where people, when they hear the word Disney, it's like, well, it's this perfect, well-oiled machine. And that's not the case. And I think that's what a lot of people were noticing, what is in front of the curtain instead of behind the curtain. And when 2020 hit, everyone got a peek behind that curtain. And it's like now people don't want to leave backstage, so to speak. Right. It's like they can't let it go.
No, they can't. Well, and Disney has been wrought with issues for its 100 in its 100-year history. They've been on the brink a few times, and they've been through it. They've been through worse than what we're seeing now, in my opinion. And it's just a company. It really is kind of a beautiful mess. It's kind of the way I like to, they're a hot mess, but they really are still that diamond, right? They're still that beautiful,
it's a diamond in the rough.
Yeah, exactly. And they'll get through this time too. This is just, look, that it's gonna be rocky for a while, and it'll be fine. But
Yeah, and honestly, for anyone who has not watched the Imagineering story on Disney Plus, please check it out, because it's more so about the parks with the Imagineers, but it does dip into a little bit of just the studio as a whole, of how it was almost a hostile takeover, and Michael Eisner and Frank Wells had to come in and basically save the company and what have you. So definitely, as OG had mentioned, they're going through a tough time right now, but they've also been through rocky waters before. And I do believe I'm an optimistic, and I feel like they'll still come out on top.
Yeah, I think so too. They'll come out stronger. I mean, sometimes you need those low points so you can get even better, right? Like if we didn't have the low points in the 70s and into the early 80s, we wouldn't have had the really, really high point with Michael Eisner and Wells in the mid 80s going into the 90s, right? Correct. Like you kind of needed that drought so these other guys can come in and kind of make things even better, right?
Yeah, because once you reach the top, there's no way up but down.
Right, exactly. And sometimes, when you hit rock bottom, sometimes you're more motivated and you do even better things. So yeah, it's hey, we like to keep half glass full here on OG55. Now, we're not oblivious to the situation. Obviously, it's a very challenging time right now, and there will be a lot of collateral damage, unfortunately, with layoffs and what have you. We might even see, entire entities sold off. I mean, who knows? Anything's on the table. But at the end of the day, though, I think the company will be fine, and I think we'll emerge stronger than before. And hopefully, we learn something along the way, right?
Yes. And speaking of layoffs, OG, well,
oh, right, exactly. Here we go. Speaking of layoffs, Mariana Barbara 7358 is asking us, do you believe that Kathleen Kennedy will be removed from Lucasfilm if Indy 5 bombs? If it does happen, what could it mean for the Mangold film? That's like the Birth of the Jedi film that they're doing, the Filoni movie and the Rey movie. So Mariana, do I believe that Kathleen Kennedy will be removed from Lucasfilm if Indy 5 bombs? Yes, I do. I here's the thing. Kathleen Kennedy has been, she's had so many L's on her watch, she's literally gone through more directors than she's made movies. I mean, that's a problem. And that's a costly problem too, right? That's a very, very costly problem. We had the very first Star Wars flop on her watch with Solo: A Star Wars Story. I mean, it's just on and on and on. We've talked a lot about it here on the channel. She's had a host of things. If Indy 5 premieres and this movie dies a dog's death at the box office, I cannot imagine her surviving that because number one, we live in a new era now. This is all hands on deck with the Walt Disney Company. It's all hands on deck with the Walt Disney Company. We've already heard Bob Iger talk about how, he's bringing accountability to these creatives. We've already seen people lose their job. We saw LaTondra Newton recently lose her job, Victoria Alonso over at Marvel. So how do you have this message to your creatives that there's accountability out there, and she can have a huge flop like this and then she keeps her job? The other creatives are not going to take Bob Iger seriously. He almost has to do something. Now, here's the interesting thing, Mariana, okay? There are rumors that she got fired today. I know you people are like, oh my God, what is he talking about? There are rumors, you heard me right, that she got fired today. George, before I get to you, I'm going to share my screen real quick. And I'm going to show this. Okay, so this is from Den of Nerds. He quote retweeted this. He goes, I don't know who this scooper is, but I'm choosing to believe it. I love Josh. He's fantastic. But this person here, THWIPT, is a scooper. And from what I understand, I've done a little research on this person, actually pretty solid from what I'm hearing. This person tweeted out this morning, I'm hearing Kathleen Kennedy is now gone from Lucasfilm. Now, I want to say this because Cameron Pasha also mentioned, I believe it was on his Patreon, that he heard today was also very chaotic at Lucasfilm. So we're hearing it from two different sources right now. That's interesting, okay? Because we're going into this Indy 5 weekend. The numbers are coming in now, right? To Mariana's question, do you think she's going to get fired? She might have got fired today. Now, again, this is a rumor. We've heard a million Kennedy getting fired rumors in the past. I get it. I'm just saying, though, it's getting a little hotter over here. And I think that this might be it, y'all. This might be it. But we'll see. We got to keep an eye on it. But, George, what are your thoughts? Could she lose her job if this flops?
Yeah, absolutely. And we had discussed this many times on the show, that this will pretty much, Indy 5 would be the nail in the coffin for her career at running Lucasfilm if the movie is a complete failure. And if the rumor is true, and again, folks, it is a rumor. So if it turns out that she is not fired, please don't come back and say, oh, gee, you were wrong. Right. We are saying it now. It is a rumor. So we are taking it as a rumor. So if that is the case, I can understand if she did already, because today started the soft opening for Indy 5. Pre-sale tickets were already sold. Me and Dre actually looked up several theaters while we were on the phone, including my own. And we kind of went through the show times throughout the weekend, and that was including the 4th of July. And not too many seats were filled up. Like one showing was only 9 seats filled, 4 seats filled. There was actually at 5:10 p.m. on this coming Saturday, which would be the first, I believe, if I have that correctly.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah,
there was no seats chosen for the 5:10 p.m. showing for Indy 5. Now, I know that's just one theater. You can't really, depict, one showtime. But for a movie that was so hyped up, and for a opening weekend on the 4th of July weekend, every seat should have been filled. But at the same time, I can somewhat understand, because I got to go see Indy 5 today during the time of this recording. It's Thursday, June 29th. And I got to see the soft opening. And a lot of the people that were in the film, in the theater to see the film, were much older generation.
Like a Gen X or a baby boomer
exactly.
kind of thing?
Yeah, there was no children. There were no teenagers. So and I actually had this conversation with a lot of people too, is how relevant really is Indiana Jones in this time era? Because if you ask a kid or a teenager, who's Indiana Jones? Who's Harrison Ford? They're going to say, what? Who? Wait, what's that? So right. Unfortunately, I mean, I'm for sure there are, kids and teenagers that do, but I think majority of that percentage, a lot of them may not know. And OG and I were talking before the show too, and it's like Harrison Ford, unfortunately, he's a kick-ass actor. I love his acting. I love his films. There's not one Harrison Ford movie I could say that I don't love. But unfortunately, he's up there, So is someone really going to go see an 80-year-old man with a leather jacket, a hat, and a whip, take on the bad guys? I don't know.
It's a tough one. And then she goes on to say, if it does happen, what could it mean for Mangold, Filoni, and the Rey movie? Now, okay, we'll start with Mangold. The Mangold film it takes place, I believe, like thousands of years prior to the Star Wars saga we know now. The birth of the Jedi. It's supposed to be like a very biblical kind of film about like the birth of the Jedi, which I think sounds absolutely incredible. I mean, I'm really excited for that. But here's the thing. It's in major, serious jeopardy if Indy 5 bombs because, number one, Mangold is the director for Indy 5. Okay. And that, I don't know, that's going to be a tough sell to give him now another Lucasfilm property if this one doesn't do well, right? Now, the good news for Mangold is, I guess, the Rotten Tomatoes score as of tonight, the audience score for this Indy 5 movie is 90%. 90%. I mean, that's pretty solid,
That's solid.
That's pretty good. So that might help Mangold, even if the box office is shaky. That could help him if the audience reception is really good, right? But I think he's in serious, like he should be worried, I think, if this movie flops. I think that it's a definite possibility that he gets removed from that project. Filoni, I think he's safe. He's the golden boy over there at Lucasfilm. Him and Favreau, have the most successful franchise that Lucasfilm, in my opinion, has done since Disney bought it with The Mandalorian. The Filoni verse has been wildly successful with fans. It's done very well. I think if there's a safe bet with 3 of these movies, Filoni's absolutely the safest. Because also, if Kennedy does get fired, the heir apparent would be Jon Favreau. Well, Favreau's not going to get rid of Filoni's movie. There's no way. That's his boy. That's his boy, So that movie's going forward, I think, almost certainly. The Rey movie, I don't know about that one. If Kennedy's out, I think that one's on thin ice. What do you think about these 3 movies, George?
Yeah, I think out of all of them, the high hope one would be the Filoni movie because no matter what shakeup goes on at Lucasfilm, Filoni and Favreau are safe. Pretty much anything. They'll probably get a nice golden promotion, if Kennedy gets kicked out of her wheelhouse. But at the same time, too, Lucasfilm has been kind of shaky with, setting these films and series up where, we have like a release date or a window when it's released, and then it either gets shelved or it gets canceled. So it's like right now, I think Lucasfilm is going to have to need a kind of a reset button, if you will. So I think Filoni's movie is safe. It may not be at the time frame when they anticipated on it releasing, if she happens to get removed from Lucasfilm, but I think out of the 3, that one's a safe bet. Rey could kind of go either way, because it just depends on if the stars are aligned. And then, as you had mentioned, OG, the Mangold film, if Indy 5 bombs, which Kennedy would be at anyway, I don't think Lucasfilm is going to try to rely on a director that literally just tanked the final Indiana Jones film and give him his own film in the Star Wars universe. I just don't see it.
Yeah, it's tough. So here we are. I mean, we have a rumor out today from 2 different sources that something is afoot right now with Kennedy at Lucasfilm. We've heard this rumor, I know, for years, but I'm telling you, everybody, this is different. We live in a different world right now. When Disney was firing on all cylinders, they could afford to have Kathleen Kennedy on there and kind of burn through directors. They could afford to do that. They can't afford to do that anymore. They're tightening their belt. The purse strings. They're tightening those purse strings. They can't afford to have a studio chief burning through directors, burning through cash like that anymore. I'm telling you. And she's in serious jeopardy. And if the rumors are true, I think she's on her way out. I think sooner rather than later. But again, these are all rumors. We're just speculating. We're just reporting what we're hearing. Something might be afoot, though. I'm telling you. All right, so let's move on to our next and final topic of this evening. This is from That's a Wrap 818. And That's a Wrap says, in your opinion, do you think Disney will actually announce some kind of expansion for Anaheim this year? Time is ticking on the Olympics. Now, from what I understand, the Olympics in LA is what, 2028?
28. Yeah.
So what do you think, George? You think that they're going to announce some kind of expansion this year? I mean, we're only talking like 6 months or something, right? This year?
Yeah, I think there's a difference of announcing an expansion and when the expansion is completed.
Right.
And especially the route that Disney goes of how they kind of take their time, and the original concept is never the final product that we get. And so I feel like if they were to announce an expansion, I feel like it's going to be possibly at the next D23 Expo, or even maybe even give us a hint at like the Destination D. I think it's going to be for something that big. They're going to hold off for a special hard ticket event. And normally with Disney, that's usually through D23, the official Disney fan club. So I feel like, yes, I think we're going to get the announcement, which could possibly open up in phases. So maybe one of the phases would be open in time for the Olympics. So it kind of just draws attention to say, hey, you know what? Disneyland's getting an expansion, and the Olympics is coming. So I think they're going to want to have something set up. It may not be in full complete, but I think Disney may have something planned to open in phases. So something is there that people can get a little taste of it. So it will draw them back to when it's fully completed. But I feel like the announcement itself for the expansion is going to be at the either Destination D or the D23 Expo.
Yeah, I think that the next big thing for Disneyland that they'll announce is going to be Pandora. I think that that's going to be the big thing. I don't know when they're going to announce it. They might, George, like what you said, they might wait until Destination D, which I think is like in the fall of this year.
November.
In November. Okay, so that's about right. Probably they might wait till then to announce like a Pandora. That's where my chips are. That's where I'm putting my chips in. I think it's going to be a Pandora expansion, and if they announce it at the end of 2023, so that gives you about 4 years,
about 4.5. So that might be enough.
That might be enough. I think that might be the play there. I think Pandora, there's a lot of momentum there. They've already said, I mean, Bob Iger already announced it. I mean, that we're getting some sort of a Pandora experience or whatever here. So the ball is rolling on that, my money's on a Pandora as the next big thing. I think we're also going to hear about whether or not Disneyland Forward is moving forward. And from what I understand with that, the timeline is like early 2024. So,
for announcement?
Well, for whether or not the city approves it.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, in terms of like, actual projects and stuff, who knows? Like people said many times, it's like a 30-year thing. It's more of a seed planting thing for the future than any kind of thing that they're planning on right now. But that's the rumors that the Anaheim City Council might vote on that early 2024. So we'll get an answer around that time. And I actually do believe they will approve it. I think the momentum with this thing is like, they just had that event, which our good friend Theme Park Casual and Barry Plays 28, subscribe to their YouTube channels, by the way. They came on the channel recently, right? And we all talked about that Disneyland Forward event, and a lot of Anaheim officials were at that event. There seems to be a relationship there with Anaheim and Disney right now that wasn't there just a few years ago. I would be shocked if Disneyland Forward doesn't get greenlit. I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think also too, if it does get announced like at the beginning of 2024, then that also gives leadway to kind of, expand that horizon a little bit at the expo once again, where they can kind of talk a little bit more, because the expo is probably going to be August, September 2024.
Right.
That's usually the time frame. And I agree with you. I think Pandora is going to be the hard ticket event, because for how popular it is at Animal Kingdom at Walt Disney World in Florida, I'm for sure with the locals in California, they'll go nuts for it. And especially the tourism coming in for the Olympics, all eyes will be on Disneyland, and especially with a brand new land, and it's Pandora with The Way of Water that just was phenomenal at the box office. And actually, on one of my emails that Disney had sent me, like a survey questionnaire, they asked me, and this usually happens all the time, are you a Star Wars fan? And I say yes. Are you a Marvel fan? Yes. But what's funny was it usually just ends. Oh, the third one they usually ask is, are you a Pixar fan?
Okay.
But this time they didn't ask about Pixar. They said, are you a Star Wars fan? Are you a Marvel fan? And are you an Avatar fan?
Something is really weird with Pixar right now. And I'm getting really kind of nervous for Pixar. I got to be completely honest. And I love Pixar. I do. And I know you do too, George. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of red flags going on with Pixar. Number one, they've had a series of kind of, movies that just haven't been performing and things like that, right? And they've been left out for some of this stuff. Like you mentioned with these surveys, they're not mentioning Pixar. Mm-hmm. In that Apple Vision, remember the Apple Vision event that we recently had? And Disney had a big segment in that presentation with Bob Iger. If you look at that, like the commercial or the ad for that Disney stuff on that, they reference every single pillar of the Walt Disney Company in that ad. So you have Disney Animation you have Mickey Mouse, you got ESPN with all the sports, you got Nat Geo in there with the water and all that, right?
Right.
With the turtle or whatever was in there. You have Star Wars, heavily Star Wars with Mando in there, and you have What If for Marvel. There wasn't a single reference to Pixar in that Apple Vision presentation. And now you're telling me, George, that you're getting surveys and they're leaving everything out but Pixar. I just think that looking at all the different pieces and connecting dots, something's happening with Pixar. I don't know what it is. Like, I don't think Disney's going to sell Pixar, because I think that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense, because now you're paying somebody else to use those IP in your parks.
I do think it's going to merge. I have a funny feeling it's going to merge. And I don't know if it's going to merge in the sense where it's not going to be where they utilize the animation studio, they utilize the animators, they utilize the creatives. Obviously the characters, the stories that they have already created, but I just wonder if it's not going to be titled as Disney Pixar's Toy Story 5, Disney Pixar's Elio, or like, I wonder if it's just going to be just known as Disney's Toy Story 5.
It might, because here's what happened. Like, I don't know if people at home, they might be too young, but Touchstone Pictures was a Disney studio, right? Mm-hmm. And it was under Touchstone Pictures that Who Framed Roger Rabbit was released and The Nightmare Before Christmas was released. But now when you buy those movies, if you buy that movie like on a Blu-ray or something, it says Walt Disney Pictures, right? They've completely changed it. Is Pixar going to get Touchstoned? I don't know. I don't know, but it seems like there's something going on there. Maybe it will happen, maybe it won't, but I feel like they're at least considering it. And I think
if they do, it's because just of the numbers that Pixar is pulling in. I think if Pixar was doing the numbers that it used to do in the 90s and the 2000s, it's like, of course, it'd be Pixar plastered everywhere. But I just think it, even at DCA, and I know there's really nothing that they could have really done with it, but they could have got a little bit more creative with Pixar Pier. So it's almost like even back then, they were like, okay, we got to do something with the pier, and we don't have too much of Pixar, so let's just cover the pier all in Pixar. And it's like, and now we're getting the only thing really now with the Pixar is the hotel, that is essentially. But it's like, how long is that going to stay?
That's a placemaker. I mean, in and of itself, that's kind of a Band-Aid. That's to buy them some time before they want to figure out what they want to do with that area, because all the land around that is what they're vying for Disneyland Forward to rezone to theme park stuff, that parking lot that sits in the shadow of that hotel. So yeah, I think that whole Pixar Place hotel thing, that's just, maybe buy them maybe 5-10 years, just to make it look presentable for the meantime. But in no way I think is that hotel long term. Like in 20 years, it's probably going to be gone. In all honesty,
Yeah.
I
agree.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that whole thing pans out. I mean, I think that hotel is freaking hideous. I wish they would have just.
It is just the aesthetics of it. It's like, again, they're keeping the format and they're just throwing something into it. It's like, let's get creative with it. It's
right.
on.
Well, and then what happens with Pixar Pier? Let's say hypothetical. Let's say hypothetical that that Pixar merges with Disney Animation and the Pixar branding is all gone, and it's just Toy Story is just a Disney Animation film now, right? So what happens with things like Pixar Pier? Do you retheme that again? Because now technically there's no Pixar brand. It's just Disney Animation,
right?
So what happens with that, right? So
and that pier has gone through so many transitions since it opened with DCA 1.0. It's like DCA 1.0, DCA 2.0, and then DCA 2.5.
Yeah,
it's
I'm
like,
telling
and
you.
then we're gonna get a DCA 3.0, like with the pier. It's like, but to answer your question, obviously it'll keep its name with the pier, but maybe they'll like tie it into something that doesn't necessarily say Disney and something that doesn't necessarily say Pixar. Like maybe it'll say something. Well, maybe they'll use your favorite word that you love Disney using so much. Maybe they'll call it the play pier.
Oh God, yeah. For those of you at home, I mean, I just think when they use that play word in like their attractions and stuff,
yeah,
it just sounds super cheesy.
It's cringy. It's cringy.
It's cringy. It just feels like something like a Chuck E. Cheese or like Discovery Zone or something.
Yeah.
Come on. These parks for everybody. When you put the play on there, it's like it feels like kindergarten or something, right?
Yeah, and it's like, honestly, the one plus side that if they do decide to remove Pixar's name from the pier, then maybe we can change that name for the ridiculous to Pixar Pal Around. It's like,
yeah, what is that?
Yeah, it's like I don't know who chose that one. To me, it's still Mickey's Fun Wheel.
Yeah, does anyone call it the Pal Around? Like,
I've never heard anyone. I hear like just regular tourists call it the Ferris wheel, and then I hear people say Mickey's Fun Wheel. I have never heard not one person say the Pixar Pal Around.
Yeah, no, I know. It's that whole thing was really, really weird, that Ferris wheel, because the front of it, they couldn't get rid of the Mickey face because it's so Instagrammable, right? So you can't get rid of Mickey because it's so Instagrammable. But yet now we have a whole pier that's Pixar. So it was weird because the front of that is Mickey and the back of that is Pixar. It's kind of weird.
I mean, as much as I love Mickey's face on the wheel, it's very iconic. It became an icon for the park and in that land. But if they wanted to just do complete Pixar, they could have did Luxo Jr., the Luxo lamp.
Right. They could have. I mean, at Tokyo Disney Sea, they have the Toy Story Toyville. And it's kind of a Pixar pier looking. It's a little nicer, but it's the same idea. And for the Midway Mania attraction, they have a giant like Woody head. You could have had a giant Woody head on there or something like that. You could have made it, But again, you can't do that because people like to take the pictures and post on Instagram, yada, yada, So Disney didn't want to touch it. So now you just have a jumbled mess,
Yes. Of course, we'll have more Diz Twitter Rumble Mania.
Yeah, right. Oh, I know. Jesus. It's unbelievable, man. It's unbelievable. But Citrus George, it is always a pleasure and an honor having my fellow Italian on with me. Italiano, holy cannoli. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on Twitter, again, but let's keep it civil, people, at Disney George. At Disney George. You can check out the podcast I'm part of called A Walk with Walt. And of course, you'll find me here on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
Perfect. Comment down below, everybody, with all of your thoughts on everything we discussed today. Hey, Pixar Pier, Pixar potentially being sold off. That'd be crazy, right? Star Wars, Kathleen Kennedy, favorite topics here on the channel. George and I discussed what we love to discuss here on the channel. What do you at home as a viewer love when we do you love when we talk about the parks? Do you love when we talk about the studio? Do you like when I do my solo videos about Blackpink? What do you love as a viewer of OG55? What do you all love? Comment down below. We would love to hear from you. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye, everybody.